Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Straight Talk with Brennan O'Brien and Tim Rowe from The Straight, brought to you by our sponsors, Darley and Inglis. Today, a big week of trade at Karaka. We've got Tim live from across the ditch. Magic Millions catalogue release, and what does the future look like for Resolute Racing? In racing, we talked to Aaron Morrison about the state of Racing Victoria, having released their annual report. Look at Racing in South Australia's books, record numbers in the Melbourne Cup Carnival, and Chris Waller's $40 million spring. And in wagering, a downturn for Sportsbet, and a 2026 court date for Entain. Tim, welcome in from Karaka, where the 2025 ready-to-run sale has just been completed. First things first, give us a summary of what went on there over the last couple of days. Tim, looked like pretty brisk trade.
Well, it's in terms of for NZB, it's a record trade for their sale. On last year's was a record trade of sort of a bit over 38 million, I think. This at the time of speaking, it's about 41 million. Yes, the catalogue's bigger this year, sort of 480 watts, probably 370 or 60 horses after withdrawals, but so more horses on offer, but certainly the median's up and but very strong sale, particularly today. It sort of picked up again with Mr. Young, so that he makes all the phone, the screens for all the phones, Samsung and Apple, so that's where all his money comes from, and if he wants a horse, no one can outbid him generally. So he sort of stepped up and bought 11 horses today after buying 4 yesterday. Vendors were a little bit unlucky in that he had an important business meeting for about 2 or 3 hours during the sale yesterday, so that halted him. But today he made up for it and bought 11.
Yeah, it was actually pointed out to me last week when I was at the Melbourne Cup. We were talking about Zheng Yusheng, the Yulong founder and financier. It's like someone said to me, described it as racing is about 0.2% of his business. And we forget sometimes that while they're very important, these guys, for their for the broader racing and breeding industry and bloodstock industry, in terms of their overall contribution or what it means for them as a business, it is a part of what they do. It's not all of what they do. So it's interesting as that work out. And Tim, you had a chat with Andrew Seabrook from NZB about sort of how the week panned out.
Joined by Andrew Seabrook from New Zealand Bloodstock soon after what Andrew, I'd have to say, was a successful 2 days of trade of more than 40 million.
Yeah, thrilled, Tim. Last year was a record 38.5, so to get 40.7, and I'm sure the boys and girls are still working at the moment, and I reckon we'll get over 41 million before the day's out. But no, really good. The median was up from 90 to 100, so that middle market was up 10%, which was great. The average was up from 151 to 157. Clearance at the moment 73%. I'm sure that'll climb. That's down a little bit at this stage, but remembering we're offering more horses, so that's still a very respectable clearance rate for a 2-year-old sale. So all in all, really, really pleased. I think that the two highlights for me were with the Australian spend. Australia have really embraced the sale of the last couple of years, and why wouldn't they, with the success of the graduates in Australia the last 24 months with some serious Group 1 horses. So Australia were, just off the top of my head, I think they were from 12 to 15 odd million, so up $3 million spend for the Aussies. And China was huge. China spent 3.5 million, I think. So we've been doing a lot of work over China for a long time, so all that sort of hard work it was great to see it pay off over the last couple of days with some big Chinese money, which you and I discussed about a couple of days ago, and I think that they bought some big lots and led by some members of the Jockey Club who the mainland Chinese. There's a few of them that are members of the Jockey Club now, so that's great to have that money here as well.
On that, with when we think China at the moment, we think Yulong and Mr. Zhang, but there is a lot of other wealthy individuals that have come in and the buyer yesterday bought the top lot pair, or he bought 2 very nice horses and a pair in Kanto. He's hoping to get a permit to race in Hong Kong. So there's sort of a new frontier, given no Singapore and no Macau.
Exactly, and when Singapore shut down last year or a couple of years ago, and when we lost Macau, we needed another market to step up, and last year it was Malaysia, who bought 42 or 43 horses, and they were again very active here, but it was China this time that has really stood up, and as I think they bought 3 separate Chinese buyers who are members of the Jockey Club spent big money, so great to see.
So
where to from here for this sale? I guess, yeah, you market it as the number one ready-to-run sale in Australasia, and possibly rightly so, but there is competition from Inglis and Magic Millions as well.
Yeah, I think, look, the sales only is as good as the last proper, the last Group 1 horse, and I'm confident that the graduates here, plenty of the graduates here are going to go on to racetrack success, and that's the most important thing, is racetrack success, and I just don't see why it won't keep going as the quality has got better year in, year out. We've seen more Group 1 success in Australia, New Zealand, and further afield. So as long as those group successes continue, as long as the success on the track is continues, there's no reason why it won't remain the best 2-year-old sale in Australasia. And I know that people love coming and buying our horses off our brilliant New Zealand preparers and vendors, the consigners who do a wonderful job. I think they really appreciate the looking at the horses run down on one track. The consistency at Te Rapa over 2 days on a grass track, I think, is a big help for the sale. And New Zealanders probably really have to sell, perhaps more so than the Australians, given that we just can't pass a horse in and run it for $150,000 on the Saturday. So they come here motivated and keen to sell, and I think that's a big advantage for the sale as well.
On the domestic market, and Karaka in 2026, I believe the catalogue's not far away. Build up to Karaka Millions a night, which is a great night to attend. Can attest to that you're looking forward to that with, should be, again, good competition in Australia and the domestic market as well.
Really excited about the yearling sales. It's our 100th year anniversary, so it's fantastic. We've got a couple of cool things. We've done a catalogue dating back to 1920, the first sale in 1926, which details all the top lot from every year. It's going to be a special book, and look forward to sending that out shortly. The catalogue itself, or 2 catalogues itself, will go out in the print out to in the mail next week, and we're going to start our canvassing pretty soon for our 100th anniversary at the end of January. I think this sale here will give everyone a little bit of confidence, and hopefully Karaka 100, or the 100th year anniversary, can be a success.
Congratulations, Andrew, and thanks the Straight being here, and I'm sure we'll be back in January. Looking forward to it.
Really appreciate Tim, you coming over, and the Straight's interest in our sales. Thanks very much.
Yeah, interesting to hear from Andrew there, and obviously a big week for NZB. It's a sale that's, we've seen the quality of in recent times, but not least of which was Chilwell's epic win in the Champions Mile on the weekend, Tim. But yep, they're going to find good horses, and that's the key to do it. We're going to do it for a whole new generation, or a whole new crop of horses in January when we head to the Gold Coast. Tim, it's only a couple of months away now. And early this week, we had the catalogue released. Obviously, always a significant moment when we get that first look at the new catalogue, and sort of what stood out from you about looking at that Magic Millions catalogue and working through what we're looking at next year.
Probably more this the structure of it. Yes, there's a lot of pedigrees that people will know, but there's 1,200 horses, and I haven't gone through it all yet. But it's more the structure. They keep refining it. I think from a vendor's perspective, the important thing is all the Book 2 horses will be on the grounds at the same time. Previously, it's been a 2-day, Sunday, Monday, and Queensland horses, we come in last minute, and interstate, we'd get first sort of port of call, but just because logistics of it, trying to manage that number of horses. But I think one single Sunday sale, I think will boost that Book 2 offering, or sort of keep the buyers hanging around after the race day, and probably doubly important next year because it does kick on to New Zealand only a week apart. So for the buyers and the professionals and the trainers that is going to both sales, there's not a lot of time in between. So I think that'll work well for Magic Millions, and obviously they've got a lot of, so-called precocious horses, and by all the big name stallions, and I'm sure it'll be relatively successful, or will be successful just on the market. We'll find out sort of come April, May, how it stacks up.
Yeah, we will, and we'll find out what was interesting. I had a bit of a look through a bit of a study of the birth dates or the foaling months of the horses coming through the Magic Millions sale, and 37% of the foals were August foals, or the yearlings were August foals, sorry. Which is interesting. I think it's statistically a high mark. I went back 10 years and it's usually about 32, 33, 34%. So obviously those go fast and early, strong August foals, even some of them July foals and September foals, dominate in that situation. Not surprising at Magic Millions, but it'd be interesting how that pans out going forward. When you look at that, while we're on the bloodstock world, Tim mentioned there also Inglis Digital, big result yesterday. Curve Alont sold for $500,000. Interesting to see Widden studs Anthony Thompson and Julia Ritchie from Bangalore stud come together to buy that very well bred and well performed mare. Obviously got a date with Zoostar in the near future. So interesting one from that perspective. And finally, in breeding of bloodstock, Tim, a piece you sort of looked at earlier this week in Royal Monday. John Stewart and Resolute Racing, where are we at with them? Obviously, he's been a massive investor globally, including in Australia over the last couple of years. There's probably a little bit of a sense that perhaps the spending spree might be coming to an end. He's obviously announced a bit of a change in the structure of his business, and he wasn't about at Keeneland last week.
Yeah, as we know, with Yulong and Mr. Zhang, so that you wrote a piece about it only a couple of weeks ago, these big investors do bring scrutiny, or if they sort of alter their business models for whatever reason, it creates scuttlebutt. And it was noted that he wasn't at Keeneland, or certainly Faye's Tipton, where he sold a Puka and I think is, and sold for $5 million. American Broodmare of the Year. It actually made good money out of that mare. But the fact he wasn't there creates innuendo, I guess. And who knows? He has bought a lot of horses over the last few years. So at some point you have to consolidate, no matter who you are, I would have thought. So maybe there's nothing in it, but he's just holding back and sort of regrouping. That was, the mare's sales. Maybe he doesn't have that big. Interesting sort of heading the next sort of 12 months, whether Magic's can get into January, or Inglis, whether he sort of continues to dip his toe in the water in the Australian market, but that might reveal a little bit more.
Yeah, and obviously he's got, again, we spoke about before, these guys have got big businesses to run. He runs a massive investment fund. Chelsea, his wife, is now running Resolute Racing, and that may warrant a change of strategy. But we say these things all the time. The challenge is everyone's looking for the next whale, aren't they, Tim? So the next one looking for someone to come in to invest. The following segment is brought to you by Darley. You can really spot the trend with these shuttle stallions, can't you? Harry Angel came down here and nailed it. Too Darn Hot doing the same. Gaio followed. Absolute powerhouse. And now it's Native Trail's turn. He's the best unbeaten juvenile colt from that Danzig sire line. The same Green Desert family that produced I'm Invincible. Unbeaten leader of his crop at 2, faster in the Dewhurst and Shamadale, Pinatubo, even City of Troy. And when he won the Irish 2000 Guineas, he did it quicker than Kingman, Paddington and Dubawi. If history tells us anything, when this type comes down, they tend to fire. On the racing now, Tim, and Racing Victoria announcing their annual report today with a $8.85 million net deficit, around a $3 million improvement from last year. The normalised deficit was about $2.5 million, but I guess the headline figure is the fact they're in the red. I had a chat with Aaron Morrison. We'll get onto that in a minute. But what was interesting out of that is, obviously he preferred it being the black, but it has been a big change. A lot of change going on at Racing Victoria, and a lot of change in the funding model as well. So I guess to a certain extent, they are, one of the two big PRAs in Australia. Everyone looks to them as where the guidance of the industry is going. But it appears to be a time of transition. And look, it also appears that perhaps that there's a sense that things are on the improve.
I haven't had a chance to, read your article yet, Bren, but I'll be jumping on the straight and doing that. But look, the figures suggest that maybe the turnover sort of reached the bottom and it's heading back up again. And, they had to make changes, and that takes a while to come to fruition. So, I wouldn't be perhaps too concerned, particularly depending on what Aaron told you about, the future, that hopefully they're on the right track. And, Racing Victoria's pretty healthy, particularly given the crowds that attended Cox Plate, Caulfield, and certainly Cup Week, given the weather.
Yep, and here's what Aaron Morrison had to say when I asked him about the year that just passed.
It's clearly been a year of transition, right? Not just in respect of the numbers and the funding model, but also, as you say, the team, the focus of the business, the structure of the business, they're all basically central to the story of that last financial year. So we're reasonably okay with where we landed, but I'd sooner have us in the black again.
Yeah.
But we've been trading in this position deliberately, with the support of the board, maintaining returns to industry and returns to participants as a priority, while we sort of transition through, as you say, the industry funding structure, and we made changes to our business model.
Just on that sort of funding structure, I mean, you were sort of, assured and sort of did the planning that it would work out, that you wouldn't be any worse off and that things would work. Is you sort of feeling that that's how it's panned out, Aaron, in terms of moving forward and how you plan moving forward? That obviously it's a moving feast, but you can plan with some degree of certainty.
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously we've got a bit more diversity in the structure of the funding model than before. There's fixed elements that give us the certainty, and then there's the greater share of point of consumption tax receipts, which, as you know, gives us a bit of a hedge if racing wagering declines.
Yeah.
And if you sort of add it all up, I think it's about right. I mean, we were comparing against the runoff of a TAB distribution, which was declining very, very rapidly. So, we sort of, when we transitioned out of that funding arrangement, we were trying to look at the average of the last 3 years, and the funding's, broadly comparable to that. If anything, there's probably some growth upside through the POCT exposure.
Yeah. Yeah. And in terms of this, I guess the structural changes you've made over the last 12 months, Aaron, are you confident that sort of you're getting a clear view of what that's going to look like going forward in terms of savings and how that's going to work and how you're going to balance that out? Is that sort of evolving as you'd hope it would?
Yeah, I think it's sort of two phases. There was some initially when I came on as CEO, there were some changes that were made at senior executive level, and then later on was the sort of main changes I made to the media business to in-house those and remove the board and simplify the governance structure. And then we made some more changes which didn't happen until May.
Yeah.
Right, so you really only had a month and a bit, maybe 6 weeks of benefit of that big restructure, where we impacted about 15% of our workforce then at the time, which is over and above all of the prior executive changes. And so you'll see the benefit of that flowing through the full financial year going forwards, right? So the annualised benefit of that is probably more like 4 million. We would have only seen a few 100,000 of that specific part at the back end of last year. And then we're just continuing to make some changes where we can.
Yeah.
But, look, it's still very challenging. We have said keeping prize money whole has been a bit of a North Star, but, it's challenging. Like we're trying to maintain returns to participants, but also clubs, continue to invest in infrastructure, maintain welfare spend. I feel comfortable that RV's doing the things that it can to be lean and efficient.
Yeah.
And make positive changes, so we are in a position to be able to look after the industry.
On the Racing South Australian, Tim, and they also put out the annual report this week. It's annual report season. There's a bit of it going off at this podcast today. For those of you who like your figures, you'll be happy. For those who don't, you might, might learn something one or two. But anyway, Racing South Australia recording a $3.6 million deficit. Last financial year, it's just a little bit more than they budgeted to. Obviously, similar to what Racing Victoria, going through that period where wagering dipped down and they had to readjust their business model. Obviously, have made some changes at the executive level as well, so it's been a time of change to them as well. They expect to make a $1 million deficit this year, or to record a $1 million deficit this year. I don't know if you make a deficit, but planning to be back in positive by 2027 or financial year 2027. So, again, time has changed. What the thing probably from pleasing from their perspective is that turnover was only down 1.3%. And their field sizes, Tim, they're going through the roof. 10.8 average. Now, that's New South Wales is about 9.3. So that's a big win for South Australia, in a state that doesn't have a hugely strong breeding industry. It doesn't stand a lot of stallions, and there appears to be a great sort of drive towards, increasing the number of horses per race, which obviously has a net positive on turnover.
For sure. I was obviously here in New Zealand, and Ned Taylor, who trains with Aaron Bain, he's over here and bought a nice Savonville Colt for those inclined. They were quite positive about South Australia. Obviously they've taken over Kildalton Park and that famed training centre, and they're investing a lot of money and time, and they're quite, as I said, there's been a lot of downtime, but it seems to be turning around and reasonably positive. Yes, they don't race every day, but you can find races for their horses, what they were saying, across all grades, and maybe it's again turned the corner a little bit for South Australia, which would be great to see given its long, proud history in thoroughbred racing.
Yeah, obviously the CEO, Nick Borden's been in the role. He's been at Racing South Australia for a while, but he's only been in the role around about 12 months. And Ryan's Dunaway, obviously, the operating a racing perspective as well. So it's an interesting time for South Australian racing. Obviously, last week we've alluded to this before, but record-breaking numbers for the VRC. Turnover on the Cup itself, Melbourne Cup itself, $247.5 million. That's 16% up year on year, and the record of all time for the Melbourne Cup. Obviously, we alluded before that, that's a great positive for the game. Now, it's an interesting one when you look at that turnover figure. There's probably a little bit of it being driven by punters having a whole great bunch of results and pretty much being cashed up from a big Derby day and previous days before then. The other thing which Aaron Morrison pointed to is that turnover is not the be-all and end-all. Turnover is a product. It's an engagement metric, but it's not necessarily a commercial metric that the clubs and the PRAs can rely upon. So, but other positive results at the VRC, growth across attendance, broadcast reach, digital engagement, and corporate demand. So I think Kylie Rogers and the team were giving themselves a pat on the back. It worked out pretty well. The weather was a pretty fickle on a couple of those days, but there was certainly a broader feeling around the Flemington Carnival. Things were positive as well. The other man we're very positive about his spring is Chris Waller, Tim, and this is the stat I managed to pull out this week. He will go past $40 million in seasonal earnings for his progeny for his horses this week. That's quite remarkable when you consider that the record is $60 million and nobody got past $40 million to about 6 or 7 years ago. Waller and Kieran Maher, the only two to have done that. Autumn Gloves has had a massive spring. Via Sistina again. A host of other really good horses. I think he won 10 races worth $1 million or more, Tim. At that pointy end, if you get it right and you get the good results, it certainly pays off, doesn't it?
For sure. And, Chris has proven over a long time, we've spoken about it previously, he's very, very good at getting his horses to peak at the right time. And obviously we notice it more with his best horses because everyone's focusing on those Group 1s and, Golden Eagles and so forth, that he just gets them to peak at the right time. And obviously he's had James McDonald, arguably the best jockey in the country, most of the time as well. It all adds up and helps. But it's just his stable depth at the moment seems to be very good. Maybe that we can give Guy Mulcaster a bit of a pat on the back there too, finding the right horses. You can't, no trainer can train slow horses and get them to win. So it's all adding up for Chris at the moment. And well, you'd think there's some very nice horses like Autumn Boy and so forth that'll, I suspect, will be very hard to beat in the autumn as well in big races.
Yes, there's an autumn theme about that. And Waller himself, in terms of the 10% he'd be getting out of that, is banking more than $1 million a month. And I don't reckon there's a sports person in Australia that'd be banking that much. Might be a few outside of Australia that are Australian, like Oscar Piastri and the like, but there's not too many that'd be banking that sort of money. So obviously that success comes with great reward as well. The following segment is brought to you by Inglis. Inglis Digital continues to produce extraordinary results. Half yours sold less than 12 months ago on Inglis Digital platform for $305,000 on Australia's most famous race, the Melbourne Cup, only last week. He's just one of 4 Inglis Digital graduates to taste victory at Flemington over Cup Week. Then there's the Inglis Classic graduate rider, Jenny. She continues to amaze with her all-the-way win in the Empire Rose Stakes. Want to find the next half yours? Check out Inglis Digital. Looking for a champion like Pride Jenny? Keep an eye out for the Inglis Classic catalogue out in the next week. Finally, Tim, in wagering, and a story I popped up today. I don't know, you're busy over there, I don't have a chance to have a look at it, but I'm happy to run through the details. Sportsbet, or Flutter, who's Sportsbet's parent company, announcing that there's a few headwinds there. It's interesting we talk about this turnover bump and these other challenges, but it's not necessarily yet flowing back onto the Australian wagering companies or the companies in Australia. Turnover dropped 5% and revenue fell 10.6% for the Australian business, which is pretty much Sportsbet, for the September quarter. So that's July, August, September. Now, things might have improved a bit there. We don't know. We do know that a lot of the bookies had a tough run with some couple of particular sports results over that time as well. But what is, I guess, significant is it does tend to fluctuate up and down, but the Australian market is the only aspect of Flutter's business that is not in growth. Everyone else is in growth, but the Australian market isn't. Well, Asia Pacific, there's the Indian market, but the Indian market that's a separate thing, sort of fall off a cliff now because of some legislation over there. But yeah, it's clearly that there's some broader challenges, and the best thing is around about the softness of the horse racing market, which is something we've heard a lot of. It'd be interesting to see if that changes. But going back to what Aaron Morrison says, turnover is not profit. There's a challenge there to make sure that for these businesses that they've got an aspect of, while it grows, that they're still be able to make money and develop themselves. So it's an interesting time. But the other point I'll raise out of the Flutter call was the earnings call was the notion that they're getting involved in this predictions market in the States. They've done a partnership over there, which is with a company called CME Group. Allows them to get into these predictions or sports events contracts, as they're known. Not something I've got a lot of great knowledge of. I've seen it develop over time, but the focus on the big boys of global wagering on these predictions markets, it's certainly changed the face of the American market in a relatively short time, Tim. On now too, the other thing I was going to mention too, Tim, was Entain have got a court date for their federal court proceedings involving Austrac. That will be December or late November, early December next year. That case may get settled before then, but I did just want to sort of raise that as a significant development in that. And Entain have said that if they will defend themselves in court if they need to, and that will be a significant one because it'll be challenging for the first time the AML, Anti-Money Laundering and Counter-Terrorism Financing Act for a wagering provider. It's been there's been cases before which haven't been fully tested. This would fully test that. So if that does extend to that, obviously there's another 12 months of uncertainty for Entain and Ladbrokes and Neds in that regard. But it's an interesting time in that regard. And anything else out of New Zealand, Tim?
Sort of touched on with Andrew Seabrook. It's 100 years of the National Yearling Sale next January, and the catalogue will be coming out probably next week. So it's a big, worthy time for NZB to look back. And at this site, I think they've been here for nearly 40 years. It's right on the edge of Auckland these days, and there's a little bit of optimism there for NZB and the New Zealand industry. So I always enjoy coming over to New Zealand and looking forward to getting back there in January. And I think maybe you'll even be coming across as well.
We'll see what happens with that, Tim. It hasn't been confirmed yet. I haven't got the official sign-off from headquarters here yet. So look on that when we can get it. But it is certainly like the relationship between the New Zealand and the Australian industry is a great strength of Australasian racing, isn't it, Tim? Like, and the connection between them. We see these New Zealand horses or New Zealand bred horses feature so heavily. And while there's a great rivalry between the sales companies, we talk about that, there's also this sort of great respect about the quality of horses that come out of each sale and the value of each sale. And the fact we've got 3 strong sales companies within Australasia is a great benefit to the Australian industry, in my opinion. And I know that you agree as well. It's amazing to see how strong and healthy these sales are, and also how differently they do it. So it's it's an interesting one, isn't it?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. And just I guess New Zealand, their broodmare population, like Australia's, is declining. So it's a bit concerning. And the new stallions, and there's limited stallions, but they've got the Brendan Lindsays of Cambridge starting, and the Chittix, obviously, and sort of the next generation coming through there as well with George and so forth. That are that they'll try and reinvest and keep reinvesting and continuing the industry on and breeding good horses. So there's some new Australian faces at this sale this week that points to the fact that they want to get involved. And OTI Racing, you've got a syndicator's license here. I think My Racehorse, and so there's a little bit of interest, and reasonably positive without overstating it.
Yes, and obviously from a wagering perspective, it's been a big change over there the last couple of years with Entain's involvement over there as well, which has changed things up and provided much greater prize money and some hopefully some longer term strength in that New Zealand market, albeit that Entain have a virtual monopoly now within in New Zealand, which have changed things around a little bit. But anyway, interesting times. Safe travels back, Tim. And thanks everybody for joining us on Straight Talk, brought to you by our sponsors, Darley and Inglis. Don't forget to give us a rating where you're listening to our podcast. Be sure to subscribe. Speaking of subscribing, check out the Straight subscription. Become a member today. $19 a month, $199 per year. It's a bargain, I guarantee you. You get all the value of all the content we can get. And we can give you $20 off if you put early member 2 in the coupon field. $20 off for the year. So make sure you get involved then. Don't forget to send us an email, editor@thestraight.com.au, to let us know anything you want us to talk about, possible interview subjects, anything else you want us to go, any feedback you've got about Straight Talk. Thanks for your time, and we'll talk to you again next week.